Welcome everyone to another exciting deep dive into the fascinating world of rare coins and hidden treasures, where ordinary pocket change can turn into life-changing fortunes. And today, we are going to explore one of the most mysterious and valuable coins in American numismatic history, the 1944 wheat penny that is known to have sold for as much as $20 million. And this extraordinary valuation is not just because it is old or because it is made of copper, but rather because of the stunning and unusual errors and mistakes that happened during its production at the United States Mint, errors that transformed an ordinary coin into a legendary rarity worth more than many houses, luxury cars, and even some mansions combined. And what makes the 1944 wheat penny so captivating is that on the surface it may look like just another common Lincoln cent. After all, billions of them were minted in 1944, mostly in copper, since the United States Mint returned to using copper after the one-year experiment in 1943 when pennies were made out of zinc-coated steel due to the wartime shortage of copper. Yet within that massive production run a few remarkable mistakes slipped through, and those errors created specimens so rare and desirable that collectors are willing to pay staggering amounts of money to own them. And to understand why a single 1944 wheat penny could be worth $20 million, we need to go back to the context of World War II, when the minting process was rushed, the demands were intense, and mistakes were far more likely to occur. And during 1943, as many of you know, the pennies were struck on steel planchets because copper was needed for ammunition and war equipment. But in 1944, the mint switched back to copper using recycled ammunition shell casings, and it is during this transitional period that some of the most famous mint errors in history occurred. Because not every steel blank from 1943 was removed from the presses, and a handful of 1944 pennies were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets instead of copper, creating one of the most legendary error coins in the world, the 1944 steel penny. But beyond that, more bizarre and accidental combinations also happened, like copper planchets from foreign coin orders being struck with the Lincoln cent design, or pennies struck with double dies where the images and inscriptions show clear doubling, or even off-center strikes and clipped planchets. And when you add the history, rarity, and passionate collector demand together, you get astronomical values. And while most 1944 pennies are common and worth only a few cents, the ones with these dramatic minting mistakes can command hundreds of thousands or even millions at auction, with some specimens believed to be one-of-a-kind commanding valuations like $20 million because collectors see them as the holy grail of American coins. And think about this, a coin you might have dismissed as spare change could actually be a fortune. Because if you were to find a 1944 penny that looks silvery instead of coppery, chances are you could be holding a steel planchet error worth millions. And even the copper 1944 pennies can harbor rare variations, like the famous double die obverse where the letters in the word liberty or the date show dramatic doubling, or the repunched mint marks from the Denver or San Francisco mints, where the tiny letter was accidentally punched into the die more than once, leaving a ghost-like shadow. And serious collectors will pay astonishing sums for high-grade examples with these errors, especially when certified by top grading companies. And what adds even more fuel to the story of the $20,001,944 penny is the mystery and allure of private collectors who are willing to spend unbelievable amounts for the prestige of owning the rarest of the rare. Because for some wealthy numismatists, it's not just about the metal or the design, it's about owning a piece of history that nobody else can claim. And this drives bidding wars at major auctions where prices skyrocket to levels unimaginable for a 1-cent coin. And let's not forget the role of condition, because a coin with these rare errors in mint state condition, showing no wear and brilliant luster, is exponentially more valuable than a circulated one. And while most circulated error 1944 pennies might fetch thousands, those in gem uncirculated condition can leap into the millions, especially if they have a unique backstory or pedigree from a famous collection. And another interesting point is the possibility of transitional planchet errors, For example, some 1944 pennies may have been struck on leftover foreign coin blanks that the mint was producing at the time for other countries, such as blanks intended for Belgian or Mexican coins. And when these blanks accidentally ended up in the presses meant for US cents, they created unusual wrong planchet errors that are so rare and bizarre that they attract incredible collector attention, and experts believe that some of these hybrid errors from 1944 are still hidden in old collections or even sitting unnoticed in jars of wheat pennies, waiting to be discovered. And if someone were to uncover such a coin in pristine condition today, it could easily reach values that justify the $20 million tag, because collectors, museums, and private investors alike would compete fiercely to secure it. And when you think about the sheer possibilities of minting errors in that hectic wartime period, you realize that the 1944 penny is not just another old coin. It's a time capsule of mistakes, experiments, and history colliding, where every variation tells a story of human error, machine misalignment, and rush production, and each of those little stories translates into enormous value when rarity is combined with demand. And let's paint a picture here. Imagine a wealthy collector who already owns the 1909 SVD penny, the 1914 D penny, and the 1955 double die, but what they do not have is a flawless 1944 steel penny in uncirculated condition, or perhaps an extremely rare wrong planchet 1944 cent. That desire to complete the ultimate set can push prices into the stratosphere, because money is no object when prestige and rarity are on the line. And this is why one of these 1944 wheat pennies can command a $20 million price tag, because it represents not just a coin, but a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And to collectors, this is the equivalent of owning a masterpiece painting or a priceless diamond, something that transcends the material and enters the realm of cultural and historical significance. And while you and I may think of a penny as insignificant, in the world of numismatics it can be the key to fame, fortune, and recognition. And countless stories exist of people who unknowingly held onto jars of wheat pennies only to later discover that one special coin hiding among the ordinary ones was worth a staggering amount. And this fuels the dream and fascination of searching every old penny you come across, because you never know if lightning will strike, and you will be the one to uncover a $20 million treasure. And when you think about it, the 1944 penny embodies the perfect storm of circumstances: the wartime shortages, the sudden return to copper, the leftover steel blanks, the human errors in die preparation, the rush to produce billions of coins, and the fact that many of these errors went unnoticed at the time, all combine to create an environment ripe for legendary mistakes. And it is precisely those mistakes that turn the ordinary into the extraordinary, and beyond just errors. Collectors also value the story, because owning a 1944 era penny is like holding a tangible piece of American history, a connection to a time when the nation was at war and every resource mattered. And the coin itself becomes a witness to that era, and when it is rare enough, with dramatic mistakes and perfect condition, its value climbs into realms that defy logic. But that's the power of rarity and demand, and the allure of what might be hiding in plain sight. So the next time you come across a wheat penny in an old box or a relative's coin jar, take a careful look at the date, the color, the weight, and the details. Because if it's a 1944 and something looks unusual about it, you might be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. And stories like the $20,001,944 wheat penny are what keep collectors searching, keep auctions buzzing, and keep the fascination alive. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about money, it's about discovery, passion, and the thrill of owning something so rare that it feels like destiny chose you to find it. Next 1951 Wheat Penny episode. Today, as we dive into another fascinating story from the world of rare and valuable coins, a world where even the smallest piece of copper can hold secrets worth millions of dollars and change the life of whoever discovers it. And in today's discussion, we are going to explore the unbelievable story of the 1951 wheat penny that has been valued at an astonishing $6 million because of its errors, mistakes, and the incredible circumstances that surround its creation and survival, making it one of the most fascinating and desirable pieces in the history of American numismatics. So sit back and imagine that one ordinary-looking penny from the early 1950s, a coin that countless people might have spent on candy or newspapers or tucked away in jars, could today be worth more than a luxury mansion or a fleet of exotic cars. And the reasons behind this extraordinary valuation are tied to the rarest of minting errors, strange anomalies, and the sheer improbability of survival, making the 1951 wheat penny one of those legendary coins that collectors dream about but few will ever see in person. Because when we talk about errors in coins, we usually mean simple doubled dies or off-center strikes or perhaps a planchet flaw. But with the 1951 penny, we find a series of remarkable possibilities that all contribute to its mystique. Beginning with the fact that the wheat penny itself was a design beloved by Americans, featuring the classic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the iconic wheat stalks on the reverse, a design that ran from 1909 through 1958 before being replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design, and within that span of nearly half a century certain dates became known for their rare varieties, their minting issues, and their unexpected oddities, and 1951 turned out to be one of those sleeper years where a normal mintage seemed unremarkable. But hidden within those millions of coins struck at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints were a tiny handful of mistakes so dramatic that they would capture the attention of advanced collectors decades later, mistakes that would elevate a single cent to the status of multi-million-dollar treasure. And one of the most fascinating aspects of the 1951 penny is the presence of off-metal strikes, where instead of being struck on the typical bronze planchet, a coin might have been struck on a leftover silver dime planchet, or even on a steel planchet mistakenly left over from 1943 when the U.S. Mint produced zinc-coated steel cents due to wartime copper shortages. And finding a 1951 penny struck on the wrong metal is nearly impossible yet documented, and this rarity makes such examples soar in value, because when an error combines history, scarcity, and the power of curiosity, collectors will bid relentlessly, and when an example in near-perfect condition emerges, the value skyrockets to the point where the once humble cent becomes worth millions. And the story does not stop with off-metal strikes, because double die varieties also play a huge role in the 1951 wheat penny's fame, and double dies occur when the coin's die is misaligned during the hubbing process, creating a doubling effect on the letters, numbers, or even the portrait of Lincoln himself. And for the 1951 penny there are reports of dramatic doubling on the date, the motto, "In God We Trust," and even the word, "Liberty," with the bold doubling so pronounced that it is visible to the naked eye, something collectors absolutely crave because it requires no magnification and adds both shock and beauty to the coin, making it a conversation piece as well as a rare treasure. And when such an error coin is preserved in mint state condition, free from the heavy circulation where that destroyed so many pennies of the era, the rarity increases tenfold. And then we also must consider the possibility of misstrikes such as broad strikes or off-center coins, where the design is shifted dramatically to one side or missing, partially because of die misalignment. And these kinds of visual anomalies excite collectors because they are tangible mistakes, easy to see, and each one is unique, no two exactly the same, which creates a sense of individuality, almost like owning an original piece of art created by accident at the mint. And when a 1951 penny combines these multiple error factors, such as being struck off metal and also displaying a doubled die, its rarity moves into the category of once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And that is how a simple coin from 1951 can end up commanding prices in the millions, with the finest known examples crossing into that legendary $6 million territory, a price point that shocks the casual observer but makes perfect sense to dedicated collectors and investors who understand the mechanics of rarity, condition, demand, and the psychology of owning something virtually no one else can ever hope to possess. And let us not forget the role of provenance, because sometimes the value of a coin is enhanced by its history, perhaps being part of a famous collection or discovered under dramatic circumstances. And a 1951 wheat penny with a known error that survived decades in a private hoard before resurfacing at a major auction can capture headlines and create a bidding war among wealthy buyers, pushing the price higher and higher until it surpasses all expectations. And while the average 1951 penny in circulated condition might only be worth a few cents or perhaps a few dollars if uncirculated, the rare error varieties are the ones that change the game, with collectors spending years searching through rolls, bags, and estate sales hoping to uncover one of these elusive treasures. And the mere possibility that such a coin could exist in a jar or drawer somewhere fuels an entire culture of coin hunting, where every penny is examined, every date scrutinized, and every anomaly questioned. Because you never know when lightning will strike and a $6 million penny might be in your hand. And beyond the physical errors, we also need to consider the psychological and historical factors that elevate the 1951 penny's importance. Because coins are not just pieces of metal, they are artifacts of time, carrying the weight of history, the portrait of a president who guided the nation through its greatest trial, and the symbolism of wheat stalks representing prosperity and growth in the post-war years. And when such a coin is combined with rare mistakes, it becomes more than money. It becomes a story, a legend, an item that sparks imagination and desire. And that is why auction houses promote such coins with dramatic flair, because they know that the narrative of rarity, error, and survival is what drives collectors to bid extraordinary sums. And so the 1951 wheat penny joins the pantheon of great numismatic rarities, like the 1909 SVDB, the 1943 copper penny, the 1955 double die, and other legendary cents, each of which proves that sometimes the most ordinary object can become a priceless treasure. And for the coin enthusiast, there is always that hope, that dream, that somewhere hidden in circulation or stored away for decades lies another one of these million-dollar mistakes waiting to be discovered. So as you think about your own coins, your own jars of pennies, or the spare change in your pocket, remember that the 1951 wheat penny stands as a powerful symbol of possibility, showing that even in a world where billions of coins are struck, a few mistakes slip through the cracks and create treasures of unimaginable value. And that is what makes collecting so thrilling, so rewarding, and so endlessly fascinating for those who pursue it with passion and curiosity. Because at the end of the day, the story of the 1951 penny worth $6 million is not just about metal and minting, it is about history, chance, and the human desire to find meaning and fortune in the smallest of objects. And it continues to inspire collectors around the world to look closely, to study carefully, and to never give up the search, because the next great discovery could be waiting in the most unexpected place. Next, 1958 D wheat penny. The most exciting and eye-opening deep dive into the world of rare and valuable coins, where tiny details, hidden mistakes, and overlooked errors can transform an ordinary piece of pocket change into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And today we are focusing on one of the most fascinating and mind-blowing coins of all time, the 1958 D wheat penny, a coin that has astonished collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike by reaching an unimaginable value of up to $5 million, not because of its face value of just 1 cent, but because of the unique set of minting mistakes, striking errors, and production anomalies that occurred during its creation, making it an almost mythical piece within the numismatic community. And as we explore its story, we will uncover why such a small copper coin has become so valuable, what kinds of errors and imperfections could possibly make it worth millions, and how these possibilities give it legendary status among the rarest and most expensive coins in the world. So whether you are a seasoned collector, an investor curious about hidden treasures, or simply someone fascinated by the idea that a coin you might still stumble upon could be worth more than a mansion, buckle up, because this is going to be an incredible journey through time, history, and the secrets of minting technology that turned the 1958 wheat penny into one of the most talked about rarities in American coinage. And to understand its immense value, we first need to think about the historical background of the 1958 penny, struck at the Denver Mint during the final years of the iconic Lincoln wheat cent design, a series that ran from 1909 to 1958 and was beloved by collectors for its simplicity, elegance, and nostalgic link to American history. But 1958 was no ordinary year because it marked the last official issue of the wheat cent before the transition to the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959, making any final year examples instantly more significant to collectors. And when you add the Denver Mint mark to the mix, which already had a reputation for producing coins with distinctive variations due to mechanical and striking issues, you create the perfect storm for potential errors and rarities. Now, what makes the 1958 wheat penny so astonishing is not just its place in history, but the fact that rare error versions have been discovered with mistakes so dramatic that they catapult the coin's value into the millions. And when collectors talk about errors, they mean everything from double dies, repunched mint marks, and off-center strikes, to planchet flaws, die cracks, and even extreme cases of wrong planchet errors. Each of these anomalies can turn a coin from being worth only a few cents into one worth thousands, and in the case of the 1958 penny, certain double die obverse examples are among the most famous and valuable errors in the Lincoln cent series, with bold doubling seen clearly in the date and lettering, which makes them instantly recognizable even to the untrained eye. And it is this kind of dramatic doubling that collectors crave, because it provides undeniable visual proof of a minting blunder, and coins with these characteristics become holy grails within the numismatic world. Imagine holding a 1958 wheat penny in your hand and noticing that the numbers in the date appear doubled, or the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust look like they are shadowed or overlapped. That tiny difference could mean the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin worth millions, and that is why the fascination with this penny continues to grow, because the possibilities of errors are vast and varied, with each one offering new reasons for its skyrocketing value. Consider the case of repunched mint marks, where the D mint mark was accidentally stamped more than once, slightly misaligned, creating a noticeable doubling or overlapping effect. These varieties have always attracted serious attention from collectors, and in 1958 issues, such anomalies make the coin extremely desirable. Then, there are off-center strikes where the coin's design was not properly aligned with the blank planchet, producing an off-balance image with part of the design missing. The more dramatic the off-center, the rarer and more valuable the coin becomes, especially if the date remains visible. Another possibility lies in planchet errors, where a coin might have been struck on an improperly prepared or even the wrong type of metal blank. A mistake like a wheat penny struck on a dime planchet or even a foreign coin planchet would be so unusual that its value could skyrocket at auction. And since the 1950s were not free from such accidents, the potential exists for extraordinary rarities. Die cracks and cuds are also common features of error coins from the Denver Mint, where heavy production sometimes caused dies to break or fracture, leaving raised lines or missing chunks of design on the finished coins. Collectors treasure these anomalies because they showcase the physical strain of minting and turn each coin into a unique artifact. But beyond these mechanical and physical explanations, there is also the allure of mystery and scarcity, because only a tiny number of these flawed coins survived. And when just a handful of collectors can own something, the value naturally climbs, especially when those collectors are willing to bid against each other at high-profile auctions, driving the prices into the millions. This is why a 1958 wheat penny, seemingly ordinary in appearance, can reach $5 million in value when the right combination of rarity, error type, condition, and demand comes together. And let's not forget the role of grading and condition in determining the worth of these coins. Because a coin with dramatic doubling or another major error will still be valued higher if it is in pristine condition with little wear. And examples: graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC at high mint state levels have the potential to command jaw-dropping sums, especially if they are accompanied by strong provenance or have been featured in major numismatic sales. And all of this fuels the ongoing fascination with the 1958 D penny, a coin that represents not just a tiny piece of copper, but a once-in-a-lifetime discovery for those lucky enough to find or inherit one. The sheer possibility that such a coin could still be sitting unnoticed in someone's change jar or tucked away in an old collection passed down through generations keeps treasure hunters on the lookout, and every new discovery only adds to the legend, fueling stories of average people who stumble upon coins worth life-changing fortunes. And as long as the numismatic community continues to treasure the history, rarity, and intrigue of error coins, the 1958 D Wheat penny will remain one of the crown jewels, a shining example of how small mistakes can lead to monumental value, and how the pursuit of perfection in coin minting often leaves behind rare and beautiful imperfections that become priceless treasures. So if you ever come across a 1958 D Wheat penny, take a closer look, examine it carefully under good light, check for doubling, off-center strikes, unusual mint marks, or other irregularities, because you might just be holding a piece of history worth millions. And the idea that a coin so small could carry such immense value is exactly why this world of rare coins is endlessly captivating, drawing in new generations of collectors and dreamers. And the legacy of the 1958 D penny will continue to inspire fascination, hope, and excitement for as long as people believe in the possibility of hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. Next, 1944 Wheat penny. Today, where we dive deep into the incredible world of rare coins, numismatic treasures, and astonishing values that can be hidden inside the smallest piece of copper change you might carry in your pocket or perhaps have tucked away in an old jar or drawer. And today, we are going to explore the fascinating story behind the 1944 Wheat penny, a coin that under the right circumstances, and because of its unusual mistakes and minting errors, has become one of the most sought-after and valuable pieces ever discovered in American coinage history, with certain examples astonishing collectors and investors alike by reaching values of around $2 million, which may sound unbelievable at first, but once we carefully walk through the background, the conditions of its minting, the possible misstrikes, off-metal errors, and other factors that have made these pennies rise to legendary status, you will begin to understand why a small 1-cent coin from 1944 can hold a fortune. So let's settle in and take a long and detailed journey through the details, the history, the errors, and the fascinating possibilities that all contribute to making this coin worth big money, starting with the historical backdrop of 1944 itself. Because during this year the United States was deeply involved in World War II, and the mint was working tirelessly to meet production demands not only for coins used in daily commerce, but also to deal with material shortages that had influenced coin compositions just a year earlier in 1943, when pennies were made out of steel coated with zinc rather than the usual bronze, a change that created one of the most famous transitional era opportunities in U.S. numismatic history, since when the mint returned to the traditional copper-based composition in 1944. A small number of leftover steel planchets from 1943 were accidentally fed into the coin presses, producing the now legendary 1944 steel wheat pennies, which are among the rarest and most valuable coins in American history and easily sell for hundreds of thousands to over $1 million depending on their condition. But in addition to these steel transitional errors, there were also unusual variations that arose from the pressure of high-volume production at the mint, creating doubled dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and even coins struck on foreign planchets that somehow entered the presses, all of which can dramatically affect the rarity and thus the price of a coin. And when you consider that collectors and investors are willing to pay incredible sums for coins that are not only historically important but also scarce, unique, and in exceptional condition, it becomes easier to grasp how a 1944 wheat penny could skyrocket to the value of $2 million, especially if it combines multiple error factors together, such as being struck on a steel planchet while showing doubling in the date, or lettering, or carrying an unusual mint mark placement, or even being mistakenly struck on a silver planchet meant for another denomination. And let's not forget that collectors also highly prize coins with strong eye appeal, sharp details, and minimal wear, which is why uncirculated or mint state examples of these error coins command astronomical prices at auction. And when these conditions converge with the passion of wealthy collectors competing for ownership of such a rarity, the bidding wars can push prices into the millions, which is indeed happened with the 1944 wheat penny, making it one of the ultimate dream finds for anyone who loves coins or simply enjoys the thrill of hidden treasure. But what makes this topic even more exciting is that while the number of surviving examples is extremely limited, there is always the tantalizing possibility that someone out there has one sitting unnoticed in a collection. And that thought fuels an ongoing hunt among numismatists and casual hobbyists alike, because every old penny you come across could potentially be the gateway to unimaginable value. So imagine the journey of a coin collector who one day sorts through inherited change from a relative and suddenly notices that a 1944 penny seems different, lighter, magnetic, or oddly struck, and upon closer inspection realizes it might be one of those legendary steel or off-metal errors. The heart-pounding excitement of that discovery alone is priceless, but the knowledge that such a coin could sell for around $2 million takes the thrill to another level entirely, and the errors themselves tell us so much about the minting process of that era. For example, the use of leftover steel planchets when 1944 was meant to return to bronze highlights how intense production demands sometimes allowed mistakes to slip through. And the double die errors reflect the manual process of hubbing dies in that time period when misalignments could create dramatic doubling visible in the date, the motto, or the wheat stalks on the reverse, while repunched mint marks reveal how each mint mark was added by hand, allowing slight misplacements or doubling that collectors today cherish. And then there are planchet errors, like clips where part of the blank metal disc was cut improperly, leading to missing edges, or laminations where impurities in the metal cause peeling or flaking, all of which make each affected coin unique. And in the case of 1944, a year that already had the backdrop of a wartime economy and material changes, these mistakes became especially meaningful to collectors, and it is this convergence of history, rarity, condition, and collector demand that explains why a single 1944 wheat penny with the right error can sell for millions. Now it's also worth thinking about the psychology of collectors, because the pursuit of owning something that very few others on the planet possess drives auction prices to dizzying heights. And with the 1944 wheat penny being such a standout piece of American numismatic history, wealthy bidders see it not only as a collectible, but as an investment and a status symbol, and that demand never seems to fade. In fact, over time it only grows stronger as fewer pristine examples remain and more collectors enter the market hoping to complete their sets or to obtain legendary rarities. And this is why even though many ordinary 1944 wheat pennies in bronze are worth just a few cents, the extraordinary errors from that year are valued like rare gemstones or priceless art. And this dual reality makes coin collecting so fascinating, because the line between pocket change and million-dollar treasure can hinge on the tiniest details like the metal composition or the alignment of a mint mark, and this is precisely why experts always recommend carefully examining every old penny you encounter, since you never know when you might stumble across a life-changing discovery. And in the case of the 1944 wheat penny, the dream is very real, as auction records have proven, with verified examples selling for prices in the hundreds of thousands to millions, including those that have reached or surpassed the $2 million mark. So next time you handle a wheat penny, especially one dated 1944. Take a close look, test it with a magnet, study its details, and who knows, you might just be holding onto one of the rarest and most valuable coins in existence. A true marvel of history that connects the story of World War II America, the mint's evolving practices, and the timeless human fascination with rare treasures, all condensed into a humble cent. And it is this mixture of history, rarity, mistakes, and collector passion that makes the 1944 wheat penny not just another coin, but a legendary piece worth discussing and dreaming about. Because behind every example is not only the possibility of great financial value, but also a story of how human imperfection and historical circumstance combine to produce one of the most iconic rarities in numismatics, and that is why the 1944 wheat penny can rightfully carry a value of around $2 million in today's market, making it both a treasure of the past and a dream for the future. Last 1951's wheat penny. Tiny pieces of metal that most people would glance over without a second thought can hold stories of history, mistakes, rarity, and unimaginable value. Today we are going to talk about the fascinating and highly collectible 1951's wheat penny, a coin that in ordinary circumstances is worth only a few cents or perhaps a few dollars in mint state condition, but in extraordinary cases tied to unique minting errors, anomalies, and rare varieties it has been valued at a jaw-dropping $3 million. And in this deep exploration we will look closely at why the 1951's wheat penny can carry such incredible value, what kinds of mistakes and minting issues occurred that made certain examples extraordinary, how condition and rarity play their role in boosting prices, and what possibilities exist for collectors and treasure hunters who might stumble upon one of these life-changing finds. So let's set the stage by remembering that the 1951 wheat penny belongs to the beloved Lincoln Cent. Wheat Reverse series that ran from 1909 until 1958, featuring Victor David Brenner's iconic design of Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and two wheat ears framing the words 1 cent on the reverse. Coins from the early 1950s are generally very common. The San Francisco Mint struck over 136 million 1951's wheat pennies. So on the surface, it might seem like there is nothing special about them. But within that large production came mistakes and misstrikes that slipped past quality control. And those mistakes are what make the coin extraordinary. Let's dive into the types of errors and why they matter. One of the most important error categories that makes the 1951's valuable is the double die variety. Double dies occur when the die used to strike coins receives multiple impressions from the hub that are misaligned, creating doubling of design elements. On a 1951's wheat penny, a double die could show on the inscription such as Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or the date 1951 itself, or even on Lincoln's profile details. When these doubling effects are strong and visible without magnification, they are particularly prized. Collectors pay huge premiums for dramatic double dies, and in high-grade examples, they can reach into the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. But in one famous instance, a coin with a spectacular double die obverse in mint state red condition became a numismatic legend by achieving a value of $3 million, and that example is the centerpiece of our story. But that is only one type of error. Off-center strikes are another major category. These occur when the blank planchet is not seated properly between the dies and the design is struck off balance, leaving part of the blank surface exposed. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the rarer and more valuable the coin. And if the date and mint mark remain visible, the coin can be attributed and identified, making it especially desirable. A 1951's penny with a massive off-center strike showing half-blank surface and still retaining the S mint mark is instantly recognizable as a major rarity. Broad strikes are similar, happening when the coin is struck without the collar that normally contains the metal, causing the coin to spread outward beyond its usual dimensions. Collectors find these intriguing and valuable, especially when they occur on earlier wheat cents. Die clashes are another kind of error, occurring when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghost-like images of the reverse design on the obverse or vice versa. These clash marks are eerie and visually fascinating, and coins with strong visible clash marks from the wheat era are always in demand. Die breaks, cracks, and cuds are another group of mint errors that drive value. These happen when the dies themselves deteriorate or crack during use, leaving raised lines, blobs, or missing design elements on the struck coin. Cuds, where a piece of the die breaks off completely and leaves a blank raised area on the coin, are particularly striking and collectible. A 1951 wheat penny with a massive cut obscuring part of Lincoln's portrait, or the wheat ears on the reverse, would be considered a standout rarity. Transitional and wrong planchet errors are among the rarest of all. Transitional errors occur when coins are struck on planchets of the wrong composition during a year of change, while the composition of cents in 1931 was still the standard bronze of 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc. Sometimes planchets of incorrect composition were fed into the presses either from leftover stock or from foreign coinage productions. A 1951 penny struck on a silver dime planchet, nickel planchet, or foreign blank would be considered an extraordinary discovery and instantly worth a fortune. Another fascinating possibility is the repunched mint mark or RPM. The 1950s was a time when mint marks were still hand-punched onto the dies, meaning that variations are common. Sometimes the mint mark S was punched more than once at slightly different angles or positions, creating visible doubling or overlapping mint marks. These repunched mint marks are avidly collected, and some varieties are highly sought after. A bold and dramatic RPM on a 1951 can be worth thousands, and in pristine condition such varieties add huge value. Another factor that cannot be overstated is condition. As in all of numismatics, the grade of the coin is absolutely crucial. Circulated 1951 wheat pennies with minor errors may only be worth modest premiums, but uncirculated coins with blazing red luster, sharp details, and no contact marks command enormous prices, especially when paired with dramatic and rare errors. Coins graded MS67 or MS68 red from this era are incredibly scarce, and when such a coin also carries a double die or rare mint error, its value skyrockets, which is how the legendary $3,001,951 wheat penny came to be. It combined a spectacular double die obverse with a dramatic repunched mint mark and survived in flawless mint state red condition, graded by a top service as the finest known example. When this coin came to auction, collectors recognized it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and fierce bidding drove its value into the multi-million-dollar range. The allure of this coin lies not only in its financial value, but also in its rarity, its story, and its place in history. The Wheat Penny series is beloved by collectors as a classic piece of Americana, representing decades of history and millions of people's daily lives. And owning a unique and extraordinary error from this series is like owning a piece of history frozen in time. What makes this story even more thrilling is that wheat pennies from the 1950s are still commonly found in circulation, in old coin jars, rolls from banks, or tucked away in collections, meaning that discoveries can still be made today. The possibility that someone might unknowingly have a multi-million-dollar coin sitting in a box of old wheat pennies keeps the excitement alive and fuels the hobby of searching, roll hunting, and examining every coin closely. And the 1951 is particularly intriguing because of the wide range of possible errors, from double dies to off-centers, from RPMs to transitional planchet strikes, each of which carries its own potential for extraordinary value. Beyond the technical aspects, there is also the symbolic importance. Coins like the 1951 wheat penny show us how human error, machine failure, or simple oversight can create treasures that future generations prize and study, and they remind us that even in a mint producing millions of coins, small variations can lead to greatness. The $3,001,951 penny embodies everything that makes coin collecting so fascinating: history, rarity, error, condition, and the thrill of discovery. So the lesson here is simple: always look carefully at your coins, even the humble wheat pennies that seem common, because hidden among them may be a coin that could change your life. And as collectors continue to search, study, and share their discoveries, the legend of the 1951 wheat penny worth $3 million will continue to inspire new generations to explore the endless possibilities of numismatics, reminding us all that sometimes the smallest and most overlooked objects can carry the greatest stories and the most extraordinary value.